Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going deep into the world of crypto and blockchain. All those buzzwords you hear everywhere. We're going to be using this intro article as our jumping off point. It's called, very straightforwardly, Introduction to Cryptocurrency and Blockchain Technology. But our goal today is to really get to that next level. By the end, you'll be able to explain these concepts to anyone. You'll know why they matter so much, and we'll explore how they could change, well, pretty much everything.
Yeah, I think a lot of people hear crypto and their eyes kind of glaze over. We're going to get rid of all that. This is about getting to the core of what this technology is all about and why it has so many people excited.
Okay, so let's start with the most basic thing.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrency, it's digital money, right? But I can use Apple Pay, Venmo, all sorts of apps.
Yeah.
So what makes crypto so different?
It all comes down to decentralization. Think about it like this. With regular money, you've got central banks calling the shots. They decide how much money is out there. They set all the rules. But cryptocurrency, it's running on a different system, a decentralized network. We call this a blockchain. It's kind of like, well, imagine the difference between a dictatorship and a democracy. With cryptocurrency, the power is spread out among a lot of people. It's not just held by one small group.
So it's not just about the money itself. It's about the whole structure behind it, right?
Right, and that's where it gets really interesting. Let's take Bitcoin as our first example. I'm sure you've heard of it. It was really the first cryptocurrency to make a big splash. So with Bitcoin, every single transaction is recorded. It all goes onto a public ledger. And that ledger is the blockchain. And get this, the blockchain is maintained by a whole bunch of computers, all connected in a network. There's no single company or government running in the show.
So it's like we're all sharing a Google Doc, but for money.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of Google controlling it, it's this whole network.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good way to put it. And because it's set up this way, it gives cryptocurrency some pretty unique traits. We're talking about security, transparency, and immutability.
Okay, there are a lot of big words there.
I know. We'll break them down.
Let's start with security. What makes cryptocurrency more secure than, say, using my credit card online?
Well, with your credit card, you're putting a lot of trust in one place. You're trusting that one central authority is going to keep your information safe. But with cryptocurrency, all the transactions are secured with cryptography, which is basically, think of it like really complex math problems. It's like having this digital vault for your money, and that vault is protected by a code that's almost impossible to break.
So it's secure. But what about transparency? Isn't it strange to want your finances to be transparent?
That's the cool thing about blockchain. It's actually transparent while still protecting your privacy. So here's the thing. Every transaction on a blockchain is recorded. Everyone can see it. But your personal information is not attached to it. Think of it like a restaurant receipt. You can see all the items, the total price, but you don't know who was eating there.
Interesting. So the record is there, but it's not linked to my name or anything.
Exactly.
Okay, what about that last word you used? Immutability. What does that even mean?
Immutability just means that once a transaction is added to the blockchain, it can't be changed or deleted ever. Like, imagine you carved that transaction in stone.
So no more calling up the credit card company because someone stole my number.
Well, that's part of the idea. It makes cryptocurrency very, very secure. Really hard to commit fraud.
So far, this makes a lot of sense. We've got this idea of cryptocurrency.
This new kind of digital money, totally different from what we're used to.
And it's all built on this decentralized network. But I think we need to dig deeper into blockchain itself. What exactly is it, and how does it actually work?
Okay, picture a digital ledger, right? But instead of being kept in one place, it's spread out across a whole network of computers. These computers are all over the world, and every time a transaction happens, it's checked by a bunch of these computers. And then if it's all good, it gets added to a block of data.
So is it like everyone's working together to solve a puzzle and adding the next piece to the chain?
Haha, yeah, that's a fun way to picture it. And because everyone have a copy of the blockchain, it's basically impossible to tamper with. It would be like trying to change history. Everyone already knows what happened.
So we're talking secure, transparent, AND tamper-proof? It sounds pretty amazing.
It is. And all these features together are what make blockchain so revolutionary. It has the potential to change not just how we think about money, but how we think about value and exchange.
I'm starting to see why people are so excited about this. We've talked a lot about Bitcoin, but I've heard other names too. Ethereum, things like that. Are there different types of cryptocurrencies?
Oh, absolutely. Bitcoin was just the beginning. There are literally thousands of cryptocurrencies out there now, and they all have their own little quirks and use cases. Like, you've got Ethereum, which can be used to build decentralized applications. and smart contracts.
Hold on. Decentralized apps and smart contracts. Now, those sound like made-up words.
Haha, they're not as complicated as they sound. Imagine a vending machine, right? But instead of one company owning and controlling it, it's run by a decentralized network. That's the basic idea behind a decentralized application, or a DApp for short. And smart contracts are kind of like agreements, but they're written in code and they automatically execute when the conditions are met.
So instead of needing lawyers to write up contracts, we can just use code.
That's the idea. It makes things way more efficient and less prone to errors.
This is all really fascinating, but I have to ask, how does this affect me, the average person? Why should I care about all this crypto and blockchain stuff?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? We've talked about the what, but now I want to know about the how. How is all of this actually being used? Let's see some real-world examples of how this tech is changing things.
Okay, well, let's start with the most obvious one. Finance. Cryptocurrency is already shaking things up in the financial world. It offers a faster, cheaper, and more transparent way to move money around, especially across borders.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Those international transfer fees are killer. So you're saying crypto could make those go away?
Potentially, yeah. It's all about cutting out those middlemen.
But isn't the whole point of a bank to, keep things safe and trustworthy? Can crypto really compete with that?
That's where the transparency of blockchain really shines. Because every transaction is recorded and can be verified. It actually can be more secure than traditional systems.
And then you've got DeFi, which stands for decentralized finance. It's a whole ecosystem of financial services. But it doesn't rely on those traditional institutions like banks.
DeFi. We touched on that earlier with smart contracts.
Exactly.
Can you give me an example of how that actually works in the real world?
Sure. Imagine you need a loan, but you don't want to deal with all the bureaucracy of a bank. With DeFi, you can connect directly with a lender. There are platforms like AVAX that do this, and the whole process is automated through smart contracts.
So no more stacks of paperwork and waiting forever for approval.
Exactly. It's much faster and more efficient.
But what about risk? Banks have all sorts of regulations and safeguards. Does DeFi offer the same level of protection?
That's a great question, and it's important to remember that DeFi is still pretty new, so there are definitely risks involved. But one of the cool things about blockchain is that it's open source. Anyone can look at the code and check for vulnerabilities.
So it's like having a million eyes watching to make sure everything is on the up and up. Okay, so we've talked about finance. What other areas are being impacted by this technology?
Supply chains are another big one. Think about all the steps involved in getting a product from point A to point B. It's a long journey with a lot of different players. Blockchain can really streamline that whole process by creating a transparent record of every single step.
So instead of relying on paper trails that can get lost or forged, it's all digital.
Exactly. And because it's on the blockchain, it's immutable, can't be tampered with.
So let's say I'm buying coffee at my local shop. Could I use blockchain to see where those beans came from?
Potentially, yes. You could scan a QR code and see the entire journey of those beans. From the farm where they were grown, to the ship that transported them, to the roastery that roasted them.
Wow, that's amazing. Talk about transparency. I could actually see how that would make me feel more confident about the products I'm buying. What other industries are being disrupted by blockchain?
Healthcare is another huge one. Imagine a world where your medical records are stored securely on a blockchain. You would have complete control over your data. You could give access to doctors as needed. No more carrying around those giant files or worrying about them getting lost.
That would be life-changing, especially for people who move around a lot or have complicated medical histories. Is this just a futuristic dream, or is this actually happening now?
It's already happening. There are companies like Burst IQ that are building platforms for this. They let patients manage their health data securely using blockchain, and pharmaceutical companies are using blockchain to track medications. This helps prevent counterfeiting, so patients know they're getting safe drugs.
Wow, this tech really does seem to be touching every part of our lives. We've talked about finance, supply chains, healthcare. Where else is blockchain popping up?
It's being used in voting systems, energy distribution, real estate, even the art world with NFTs, those non-fungible tokens.
Like blockchain is this Swiss Army knife of technology.
It really does seem that way.
There's a use case for it in almost every industry you can think of. I'm starting to see just how much potential this technology has. But with all this talk of disruption and revolution, I can't help but wonder, what are the downsides? What are the challenges that come with this new world?
That's a great question, and it's important to be realistic. While the potential benefits are huge, there are some hurdles to overcome. One of the biggest ones is scalability. Current blockchain networks can only process a certain number of transactions per second, which can lead to congestion and slowdowns.
So it's like rush hour traffic on the internet.
Yeah, kind of.
Not ideal if we want everyone to start using this technology.
Definitely not.
What are some of the other challenges?
Well, there's also the issue of energy consumption. Some blockchain networks, like Bitcoin, require a lot of computing power, which means they use a lot of energy.
Right, we talked about that earlier. And I know there are some more energy-efficient options out there, but is that enough to really address the environmental concerns?
It's a valid concern, for sure. Developers are working on ways to make blockchain more energy efficient. But it's something we need to keep thinking about as this technology evolves.
Okay, so scalability and energy consumption are two big challenges. Any others?
Regulation is another big one. Governments all over the world are still trying to figure out how to regulate this space.
Yeah.
Because it's changing so fast.
It's like the Wild West out there.
In some ways, yeah.
But I guess that's to be expected with something so new and disruptive.
Right. And then there's the user experience. For a lot of people, cryptocurrency and blockchain can seem really confusing. The technology needs to be more user-friendly if we want it to reach its full potential.
It's like trying to explain the internet to someone who's never seen a computer.
Exactly. There's a learning curve, for sure.
So we've got these challenges, but I'm still curious to hear your thoughts on the future of this technology. What's on the horizon? What are you most excited about?
Okay, well, even with the challenges, there's a lot to be excited about. For one, we're seeing the emergence of what are called Layer 2 solutions. These are designed to address the scalability issue. They process transactions off of the main blockchain.
So it's like adding more lanes to the highway.
Pretty much, yeah.
Less traffic jams.
Right.
What other innovations are coming down the pipeline?
We're also seeing a lot of progress in interoperability, which means different blockchains will be able to communicate and work together.
So instead of all these separate blockchain networks, we could have this interconnected ecosystem.
Exactly. That's the goal.
That sounds incredibly powerful.
It is. And then there's the potential for integration with other technologies, like artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things.
Okay, now we're getting into sci-fi territory.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you start thinking about all the possibilities.
I'm definitely starting to see a glimpse of what the future could hold. But before we get too carried away with our flying cars and robot butlers, I think it's important to talk about the ethical side of all this. All this talk of potential and disruption, we need to make sure we're moving forward responsibly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The potential, the real-world applications, even the challenges. But like you said, we need to think about the ethical side of all this, too.
Exactly. Technology doesn't exist in a bubble, right?
Yeah.
So one of the big ethical concerns with cryptocurrency is its potential for being used in, well, not so legal activities. Because transactions can be somewhat anonymous. There's a worry that it could be used for money laundering or even funding criminal organizations.
Yeah, it's like any powerful tool, right?
Yeah.
It can be used for good or bad. So how do we make sure this technology is used responsibly?
That's where regulation comes in. Governments are trying to figure out how to create frameworks to prevent those illegal activities, but without stifling innovation.
It's a tough balance, for sure. Finding that middle ground between freedom and security
really is.
Makes you think, is complete anonymity really a good thing? Even in the digital world.
Good question. What other ethical things should we be thinking about?
Well, we've talked about the energy consumption of some blockchains. That raises some serious questions about the environmental impact. If we want to see widespread adoption of this technology, we need to make sure it's not hurting the planet.
It's like we're at a fork in the road.
Yeah.
We can just keep going full steam ahead without thinking about the consequences. Or we can take a step back and ask ourselves some hard questions. What kind of future are we building?
Exactly.
What kind of world do we want to live in?
And that leads to another really important ethical consideration: accessibility. Will these technologies create a more equal playing field? Or will they just make existing inequalities even worse?
Yeah, that's a really important point. If only certain people have access to this technology, then we're just widening the gap, not closing it.
Right. We need to make sure everyone has the opportunity to understand and participate in this new digital world.
So it's not just about building the technology, it's about making sure everyone can benefit from it. Okay, so we've talked about the ethical side, but let's shift gears a bit and look ahead. What are you most excited about when you think about the future of blockchain and cryptocurrency?
Well, one thing that's really captured people's imaginations is the metaverse. It's this immersive digital world built on blockchain technology.
Metaverse. I feel like I've heard that word everywhere lately.
You probably have. It's getting a lot of buzz. So imagine owning digital assets in this world. Virtual real estate, unique artwork, even clothes for your avatar. And you can buy, sell, and trade them all using cryptocurrency.
It's like stepping into a video game.
Kind of, but it's more than that. It's a whole new way of interacting and experiencing the digital world.
What else are you excited about?
I'm also really fascinated by DAOs, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations.
Okay, another acronym?
I know. There are a lot of them in this space.
But break it down for me.
So basically, a DAO is an organization that's run by code, it's governed by its members, and it operates transparently on the blockchain.
So it's like the ultimate form of democracy.
You could think of it that way.
Everyone has a say, and decisions are made collectively.
Exactly.
Are there any real-world examples of DAOs yet?
Yeah, there are actually. One example is MakerDAO, which governs the DAI stablecoin.
So it's not just a theoretical concept, it's actually happening.
It is, and we're going to see more and more of these DAOs popping up.
What other innovations are happening in the crypto world?
Well, there's a lot of research going on in privacy-enhancing technologies. These aim to give people more control over their data.
So even more privacy than what blockchain already offers.
Yeah, it's about taking it to the next level. And there's also research into quantum-resistant cryptography, which could protect blockchain networks from the potential threat of quantum computers.
Quantum computers. Now that's getting really futuristic.
It is, but it's something we need to start thinking about now.
So it's all about staying ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this, but in a good way.
I get it. It's a lot to take in.
As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing is to keep learning. The more you understand about cryptocurrency and blockchain, the better equipped you'll be to navigate this space. Don't be afraid to ask questions, do your research, and stay informed.
That's great advice. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of crypto and blockchain. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and maybe even feel inspired to learn more.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
It's been great having you. Until next time, happy diving, everyone.